Shalom everyone, and welcome to Tafkid, finding your personal mission in the world and how to live it. It's an amazing thing to me that I meet people all the time who have no idea what they're actually doing on planet Earth, other than, their Jewish mission, to say Yehi Shmei Rabbah at the right times, and the basic Jewish lifestyle, like that they've got. And so many people, and especially if you're raised very observant, so many people were raised in a world where there was no such thing as a personal mission, a personal tafkid, unless of course it fit the big three, which was Al Shlosha Duvarim Ha'olam Omed, on the three things the world stands on, which is Torah, so you could be a mechanech, that's a mission. That was option one. Option two, Al Avodah, you could be a shamish in a shul, you could be getting a kids prayer group together, or whatever. Anything you did about avoida was considered good tafkid. And the third is gimulus chasadim, is to run some kind of a chesed organization of something or another, and you were in, if you could get those three. So it wasn't bittul Torah, and the way the system really was that the focus was on survival. The last nail in the coffin of Jewish Europe was the Holocaust. And so the survivors, if you want to call them that, that's generous to call them survivors, because you all know your grandparents, like they're barely surviving. But the survivors, their job was to show those Nazi bastards and rebuild the communities. But when you're rebuilding a community, you're focusing more on the infrastructure of the community, the system of the community, the educational system, the buildings, it's all structural. But human beings aren't structure. We're not institutions. You're human. You're a human being. And so there's a vision of purpose within every individual. And that's his tafkid in the world. Every person has a tafkid in this world. And the Arizal says that everyone's tafkid comes easy and everyone's tikkun comes hard. Tafkid comes easy, tikkun comes hard. So what's a tafkid? Tafkid is what you're meant to do in this lifetime. Tikkun is your difficult stuff that you got, your midas and your mitzvahs that are particularly hard for you, or it could be part of your tikkun. Who you marry and all that stuff could be part of your tikkun. And kids you have are definitely tikkun oriented. But tafkid is supposed to come easy, but no one knows what their tafkid is. A lot of people came to me over the years and they said, Rabbi Yom Tov, I don't understand it. I got this cousin, he's going off the derech, and he's like really gone the wrong way, but I see Hashem's just letting him go. Hashem letting him go. He's even getting a bracha and parnasa and everything, and he's doing everything the wrong way, and yet nothing seems to happen to him. What? I don't understand. So I heard that many times, and there are two answers. One is that how can a guy do the wrong things and get bracha? And the answer is very simple, is that wherever the Torah says there's bracha and klala, it's talking about klalius it's Klal Yisrael. Hishamru lachem, it's not hishamru lacha. So of all the stuff that will go wrong, that's going to happen to Klal Yisrael if we go wrong. If enough of us go wrong, there aren't 10 tzaddikim anymore. So all hell breaks loose, And whereas if an individual goes wrong, he's got his own tikkun. It's a whole different story having to do. You'd have to be a master of the Arizal's Shara Gilgulim to understand why everything's going good for a guy who's doing everything wrong. It's about Klal Yisrael, such a thing. But then I had another thought, and the other thought comes in a mushal, that every Jew is born with a hook in his mouth. He's born with a hook in his mouth. And Hashem's up on the boat, And every Jew, their hook's already in their mouth. So if you see a guy go in the wrong direction, Hashem is Hashem is totally patient. You could say to Hashem, how can you be so patient over this guy? And Hashem would say, what do you mean? He's got a hook in his mouth. No matter how far away he runs, when he dies, once the line goes limp, he's coming up on board. And when you will be brought up on board, Hashem's going to have two questions. I know he has other questions, but he has two questions for us. One question will be, were you Jewish? And the other question will be, were you Jewish? When he asks, were you Jewish? So you'll be like, are you kidding me? I was God's gift to Judaism. And you recite all your famous words like Baruch She'amar and Shtabach, and maybe give him a little nishmas. Of course I was Jewish. And then he says, were you Jewish? At which point you're like, oh, come on, boss. Nobody said anything about Jewish. What does Jewish even mean? And Hashem says, I created you with a purpose. Every person has a purpose. And you were supposed to be living that purpose. Like, there were things that were supposed to happen in this world. And we all know that famous story of the kid who was overhearing his parents saying he was taking them out of cheder because he just can't seem to get it. And I forget what happened, but in the end, the kid realized that he's going to get upstairs and there were going to be certain books asked from him that had he just... I think what happened was he begged them to keep him in cheder and that he would really try now. And who was that?
The
Netziv. Oh, that's funny because I live on Rehov Netziv. So I live on HaNetziv Achadaser. So anyway, he begged them to...
They wanted to take him into his business.
Right, they wanted to take him into business, so he said he's going to stay in cheder. And he, in the end, he said that these books he would have been asked about these books because these were part of his tafkid, was to put out those sfarim that he put out. And anyway, so we all have a tafkid. We're going to be going through the workbook together, so let's begin, opening on page 1. You'll see your table of contents. I suggest putting your name somewhere. And turning already to page number 2. Finding your God-given personal life mission in this world. The goal of life is not happiness. The goal of life is not happiness. And how many people are running around out there, never happy, occasionally happy, but searching for happiness? And it's just, happiness is elusive. Based on the weather, is that going to be your happiness? Because it's a nice day? Or it's not too hot, or because you're getting on a lot of parnasa, now you're happy? I could show you a lot of people getting a lot of parnasa and not very happy. And so, what's going to bring me happiness in life? And the answer is that happiness is not the goal, rather, the true goal of life is having a meaningful life. If you have a meaningful life, you're going to have a happy life, because your life was meaningful. All the people out there, those Generation X people, the millennials, that got rid of God, basically, have serious issues with unhappiness. Serious issues with it. Why? Because if there's no God, then what's meaningful? What would be meaningful? The answer is, well, whatever you say is meaningful. But you're so random. If every person gets to make up what's meaningful, so then, maybe if you're a Gentile, you could fool yourself for most of your life. But if you're a Jew thinking he's going to be able to make up enough meaning to keep him happy, a Yid, never will work. And the reason that is because a Jew is part of the collective, subconscious Sinai experience. Meaning, when it says in Parshas Nitzavim, that it says that those who are standing here today and those who are not standing here today, that God makes the covenant with. Why? Because everyone's mazel was there. Everyone's neshumas were at Har Sinai, which means every Jew throughout all of history has inside him a tremendous need for Torah, for Har Sinai. It's in their hard drive. So as creative as you may be to make up what's meaningful in your life, you'll never get anywhere close to what's inside your heart, what's hiding inside your heart, which is this great desire for true meaning, for meaning that's actually true, not arbitrarily true because you think it's true, but actually true, absolutely true. And so for that reason, a Jew can't go for anything other than real truth. Now, since we know that meaning is what will lead to you having a happy life, well, you need to prioritize what is the most meaningful, what's the next most meaningful, what's the next meaningful, and just move your way up the pyramid. Because the top of the pyramid, which is, why do we talk about pyramids? Because pyramids point. They point. And when you were a little tiny kid and you couldn't speak yet, you know what you started with? Pointing. That you wanted that cookie. Or you wanted something. Human beings point. We point at stuff. And when I point at something, if I look at something and I point at that, it's at the sacrifice of everything else I could look at. And if I point at something, it's sacrificing whatever else I could point at. There are other options to point at. But once I point at something, I'm saying I'm sacrificing everything else for that. That's my priority. That's what I want. And so it's important to have a pyramid of meaning in your life. Now, I'm not here to tell everyone what their pyramid should look like, but I'm going to anyway. Please look at the book here on page 2 there. You'll see a pyramid, and you'll see the five levels of importance that will bring the most meaning. So at the top of that pyramid is Hashem, which in tradition is an eye. At the top of a pyramid, there's a seeing eye, the eye that sees and is not seen, the seeing all eye, the omniscient, it's called in fancy English. Omniscient means all-knowing, the all-knowing eye. And that's Hashem at the top of the pyramid. Well, think about it. If you look at it, your tafkid's based for sure on the fact that Hashem put you here for that tafkid. Why would you have such a family? Like, if you think about my life, I was such a progressive liberal environmentalist that I wouldn't have even gotten married because of, it's irresponsible. And certainly having kids, Okay, maybe I would have had like 1.2 kid. Maybe, 2 would be like more than the US average. So meanwhile, with my 8 kids, 2 of those are mine and 6 are Hashem's. Because 2 of those kids I might have had statistically. The other 6 are for sure from the words, be fruitful and multiply, puravu, which is straight from the Torah. So you see that families also, what are all those kids doing there? Answer, Hashem said so. So the families all, and where's all our money go? Where's all our money go? It goes to Shabbos. For these, Goyim take loans, like the weeks coming up to Thanksgiving to make such a meal. We're set up, we make it every single week. 2 meals. 2 big sumptuous feasts every single week. Bring on Yom Tov now. And we're gonna take it in the next step. Anyway, but that's the family, and we're investing in the family the whole time we're doing that. And then life's pleasures. Life's pleasures are, sure, Hashem wants you to see the Alps. He wants you to enjoy. He lined your entire body with nerve endings to sense pleasure, to the ears to hear the beauty, to see the beauty, to taste the beauty, to feel it, to smell it. Like you're clearly lined with pleasure sensors. And Hashem wants you to do it. He does not want you to do it instead of a mitzvah. He doesn't want you to do it instead of your tafkid. He doesn't want you to do it on the cheshbon of your family. But he wants you to do it. Sometimes I go to Schwitz and I'm with guys at Schwitz and I could tell those guys are avoiding stuff. They're avoiding work, they're avoiding family. They don't have any idea what their tafkid is. And then the last one is your work, your parnasa. And you need that to pay for it all. First of all, the top of the pyramid is very expensive. Having a tafkid, many people have to pay for their own tafkid. We'll speak at the end of the seminar tomorrow night. We'll speak about how to monetize your mission, like how to actually monetize your tafkid, so you can actually make money off your tafkid. I do that. And by the way, if you monetize your tafkid, you'll never work a day in your life. I've never worked a day in my life. This is as close as I can get to working. But I'm sharing like my inner desire to fulfill my tafkid, which is, by the way, my tafkid is the bridge. I bridge people to themselves, to one another, and to Hashem. That's what I do. So if you think about how you know me, and you think about any time we've been together, anytime, you'll see I'm always getting you in touch, bridging you in touch with yourself, with your family, and friends and community, or with Hashem. Always those three. That's what I do. That's my tafkid. And people seem to pay me for this, which is great. I monetized it. Now I never have to work. So I'm always in tafkid. Anyway, but work is meant to pay for all these things. But how many of us know plenty of people who have their pyramid flipped, where they, you understand, their work has taken over everything. They flipped the pyramid. And so they got work at the top, their davening stinks. You see those guys in shul with their davening. And the kol hakavod to them, they got their smartphones away at least till Chazor Sashatz, and they're doing pretty good. Yeah, I think it's a good thing that they have the signs up not to take out the smartphone in davening, because if there wasn't that sign, But their davening's next to not davening, and many of them actually stop davening. So their avodas Hashem is completely brushed aside. They don't know where their tafkid is, as most people don't, which is why we have this seminar. And their families are completely ignored, buying off their wife and kids with credit cards. And they don't even remember their life's pleasures. I've asked guys, in their Cadillac Escalade, and I'm like, come to Schwitz. And he's like, Schwitz? Yeah, Schwitz. It's like, what do you want me to sit in a hot box for? But what he's really saying is he has no connection to life's pleasures. It doesn't even compute to him to go to Schwitz with the money he's making. So what does he spend it on? And I guess on his Escalade. That's his pleasure. Anyway, but that's the question at the bottom here is, does your work eclipse other priorities? Okay, let's go to the other side, page 3. So there are two games of life. You got an inner game of life and an outer game of life. If you're a possible you graduate, which I think everyone is here, if you're a possible you graduate, so you did a lot of work on your inner game. That was all about the inner game. It was the world of being, which might be worth adding to the book, that the inner game of life is being, while the outer game of life is doing. Now, living your tafkid is doing. Possible you is busy cleaning out the inner game. It's cleaning out your inner stuff, so that when you go do something, you can do it from a clean place, which is the outer game. Doing things from a clean place. So the inner game is personal development. The outer game is your tafkid. Now, here's the thing. Actually, let's read. Make sure your mission is not a bluff. Why? Because, it goes on. We have a misconception that if we have a strong public outer game, we can mask our lack of coherent inner game. A neglected inner game will eventually implode and expose us in our outer world. For example, think of politicians or movie stars humiliated in the tabloids or dead of an overdose on their hotel room floor. Your inner game is the key to vibrational cleanliness of your outer game. You read that with proper syntax. Your inner game is the key to vibrational cleanliness and longevity to your outer game. Meaning, rock stars die when they're 40. I don't think any of us want to lose our lives at 40. We want long lives. But we also want a long outer game. We want to make a difference in the world for many, many years. And the only way you can do that is having a strong inner game. And our wives are very good, for those who are married. Our wives are very good at calling our bluff. They're good at calling our bluff. So expect to get busted if your inner game is not strong. If you don't have a strong inner game, you've all been about outer game, which for most people is work because they don't know what their tafkid is. So the women are going to call the bluff, and they're going to make trouble for you. The way it works generally is men like chaos in business because you can't grow something without chaos. Everything grows via chaos. You have to have some semblance of order, too. Too much chaos, you're full of anxiety. Too much order, you get bored, and your business doesn't grow. And so what do? We take risks. Take more risk. Not too much risk, you got to sleep at night. But you take risk, just enough to grow things. But the funny thing is about men is that we prefer our chaos at work and order in the house. But what's the problem? Is our wives want to grow the relationship. They want to grow. And they know the only way to grow things is chaos. So Mr. Order comes home expecting her to keep order, and she will throw chaos into his life to make the couplehood grow. So women will actually make chaos for their man in order to grow the relationship. And my wife has put so much chaos in my life. Every time I want my home to be where order takes place, she will throw chaos at it. And I have grown so much in the relationship. She's grown a lot, but I've grown a ton because she never lets my inner game rot. Every time I go back to ignoring the house and expecting order there, every time I go into that place, she will mess it up and put chaos in my life. A lot of people don't realize that this program is a major Shalom Bayis program. This is serious Shalom Bayis here. Because once you have a mission, think about it. Women are not happy to sacrifice for parnasa, meaning to sacrifice time of their husband for parnasa. But tafkid, they'll sacrifice as much as you need. So when it's about parnasa, they get very resentful. When it's about tafkid, they're behind you all the way. So for those of you who can't keep your cell phone down, meaning keep your cell phone out of the house, so she gets more and more upset because she knows you're like back in business in the house. Tafkid in the house, it's a good example. The kids see this man's on a tafkid. Like having the cell phone out, not that you should have it out during dinner or time putting kids to bed, but at least when you got it out, you're involved with tafkid. Please turn to page 4. And then we have our macro and our micro mission mix up. So there's something called a macro mission. That's the Jewish people. We have a big mission. Just open the Torah and you'll see that we have a lot of work to do. We are an Or La'amim, a Kiddush Hashem for the world, that Hashem's name should be big because of us. That's our big mission. And then we have our micro mission, which is the you-ish, which is what you're here for, what you're actually here on this earth, your purpose for having been in this world. Something Gentiles would never mix up, but black-hatted Jews over the last 2 centuries have totally mixed up. Every person has 2 missions. 1, a macro mission to pass along tradition, and 2, a micro mission you were born to fulfill. They are not in conflict and both need to be expressed fully. There's no conflict between them. They both need to be expressed. A little history. At the time of the Enlightenment, Europe emerged from under the church, and suddenly extreme individuality sprouted into the world. The Jews who rejected the Enlightenment shifted observant Judaism into a group identity movement at the expense of individuality. This was further exacerbated after World War II, as many of the observant survivors were psychologically disassociated as a result of the ritual torture. These survivors trained a new generation in Judaism bereft of individuality. Individuality is the inalienable hallmark of the biblical perspective. Jews have taught the world such basics, the rights of the individual, virtues we all hold today as self-evident. Ironically, the Haredi communities, who under any other style of government rule would have been expelled, today enjoy the rights on the streets of America. Meanwhile, the mandate of personal mission is not commonly encouraged. So this is a crazy irony, is that the reason Jews just kept getting thrown out of one society after the other is because there was no concept in those societies of libertarianism, that every person should have the liberty to live his life as he so chooses. The right to the pursuit of life, love? What was it?
Life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
The pursuit of life. No, sorry.
Life, liberty.
The right to life, liberty. Yeah. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so what's so interesting is that we have these communities here who are taking full advantage of that while not granting their kids life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You understand? It's wild. It's a total irony. You know, it's like we can block all of 14th Avenue outside Bubba during Kiddush Levana and like have cars like trying to get around the groups of Kiddush Levana. Like we're going to take full liberty in our lifestyle. But meanwhile, we're not going to allow the individuals in the group to pursue their own individuality. And that's this whole under 40 generation today, is all the under 40s are like, to hell with that, you know, we're taking our lives back. And what's amazing is they really are. Like no one seems to answer to anybody anymore. And it's wild. I mean, I watched it all happen because I've been watching the observant community for 32 years. And boy, has it shifted in the last 10 years. No one's asking anyone anything anymore. And everyone's doing whatever they want. And the last grip they have is the education system. You know, if you don't X, Y, or Z, you're not going to get your kid in the chayvit. That's the last grip. But what's going to happen when this whole generation are in their 60s and they're the donors and they're the schools and they're the mechanechim and they're the, you understand? Then the whole thing is the revolution will have finally completed. You know, because then you're not answering to anyone. Right now, the only people you answer to is your schools. That's it. Which is, now I doubt the leaders are thinking about it, because the leaders are just wondering if people even respect them at all anymore. But I wonder if they realize, like, the last level of control is just the schools at this point. By the way, that's notwithstanding that there are some like serious Yirei Shamayim in every community who still are like constantly asking their dayanim, and you understand they're speaking to their dayanim, they're sitting at Tish, they're in full Masorah mode. We all know people are living that way, but that's not the majority at this point. You know, the majority are doing whatever they want. And by the way, many of those people who are doing whatever they want are doing so with full Yirei Shamayim and learning Starim and with the davening and their avodas Hashem. They're just taking their lives back from 2 generations of having lost individuality. Okay, here we go. Now we got to get to work. Page 6, please. And now we're moving into your tafkid. So you'll notice that this part's called finding your own voice. The word for speaking in Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh, is midaber. The word for wilderness is midbar. It's the same exact word. We see throughout the Torah that for someone to get nevuah, they needed to be in the midbar. They were all shepherds. Nevi'im were always shepherds. Well, what's unique about a shepherd? A shepherd's away from the city. He's away from the town. There's no voices in his head. And maybe when he grew up there were a bit, but now he's a shepherd. And he's out in the mountains. And the only voice he starts to hear after a while is his own. And if he gets pure enough and clean enough and he's just really and true to himself fully and gets clear, then Hashem can speak through him. Then he can become a vessel for nevuah. Our own voice is very far. I don't even know if you could isolate your own voice. The voice is full of so many other influences. So many other voices are in your head. And it's important that in finding this, I'm not expecting you to get nevuah, but we need to find a voice inside you that really cares about something that's worth living your life for. We have to hear your voice. We're looking for we're looking for your tafkid, not a tafkid. But to get there, we got to find your voice.